I fought for this an opportunity to really talk about research writing, which is really important for our association, but also for our journal. And Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, thank you very much for granting this to all members, because last year I was given just a plenary session where only, I think, 4 people attended. And yet that's not what this is about. This is about for the whole members. Even I will stress this, even people who are associate professors, people who have got PhDs, need to know how to write research papers. So this is what this is about. Making suggestions that I'm speaking from my experience, having been a reviewer for 6 international journals and having been on several editorial boards on at the international level. So, suggestions for writing research papers, and I'll go straight to it. Kind of Christian University, but also North Carolina State University. Okay, opening remarks. First, publishing is not easy. So for those of you who are PhD students, master's students, please remember, publishing is not what? Easy. If it were easy, everybody would be an associate professor, everybody would be a full professor. In fact, in East Africa, I don't know how many full professors we have. I don't think we have, in communication, journalism, media, I don't think we have more than 15. I stand to be corrected. Why? Publication is what? Publishing is not what? It's not easy. Thesis, dissertation is not a publication. So when those of you who graduate and you have your PhD, please do not say, please do not write on your CV or resume that you have a publication. This is just to make sure that we do it right. A research paper is different from a thesis and dissertation. In fact, when those of you who are our students, PhD students, when you submit some of your papers, you submit them in the form of your dissertation. And it has to change completely to a research paper, which is different because the requirements are very different. So please note that. That's why this is important. The publishing requires a thorough review process, and the review process is vigorous. Is vigorous, and that's why publishing becomes difficult. But at the same time, I'll say it towards these opening remarks. Okay, this is intended to make sure that the product is great for you as the publisher, but also great for any journal, and some journals are even extremely strict. It requires, publishing requires patience. It requires resilience and humility, because reviewers can sometimes be extremely critical, sometimes negative. Yes, that's academia. So please, just remember, have that humbleness to make sure that when they return which always happens, no paper is submitted and it is accepted and it goes through straight to publishing. It doesn't happen that way. The paper, even if it is accepted, it doesn't mean that now it is going to be published right away. In fact, even accepted papers sometimes never make it to publishing. So be aware. So once it is accepted, it will go through the editorial, okay? And the editor can send it to you back and forth many times to make it proper. Even the reviewer will come back with a lot of comments. So you need to be humble so that, and a lot of you who contributed articles to this journal that we have just published a few weeks ago, were really very patient. I really have to give you a thumbs up because you did, okay? Publishing is rewarding. Publishing is rewarding because it leads to being cited. Being cited in other journals, in chapters, it leads to promotion. That's the only way that people are promoted from senior lecturer particularly to associate professor to professor. And in some universities, particularly in the US, I don't know about the European, but in the US, because once you are full professor, many people stop publishing. But if you are full professor and you continue publishing, you become what we call a distinguished professor. So there's life after that. How does that come? It's not teaching. Nobody is going to promote you because you are a very good teacher. It's what? Publishing. But publishing also leads to confidence in academia. So, very rewarding. Okay, what are our requirements for African Journal of Communication? 4,000 to 600 to 6,000 words. My bad, as we say in the US. That was supposed to be, dash. Okay, 4,000 to 6,000 words, because I've been asked this many times. There is a review process, about 2 months, give and take, okay, depending on the reviewers. After acceptance, it goes through editing, and that can take 2 to 3 months. Please be aware. Once it is editorial is done, then it goes to proofreading. That takes a very short time, so that shouldn't worry you. Then the deadline for the coming issue is November 1st. Please be aware. I've already got, I think, 6 papers, so we're almost there. So for those of you who want to be in this next issue, please. My last point in the introduction is, please, we need reviewers. And by the way, reviewing papers is rewarding because you put it on your resume, and it is also given as in your annual report. You put it there, and it is rewarded. But also it is rewarded for promotion. All right? Okay, what do we need? The abstract first. For the dissertation, your abstract may require more words, but for most journals, the maximum is about 200 words. About 200 words in the abstract. And watch that, okay? The background is not necessary. You should begin right away in your abstract with the purpose. And many people talk when they write, particularly our students, they write, the aim of this paper or this paper is seeking to blah, 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 blah. Okay. The academic word is the purpose. The purpose of this paper is to, or was, that is the beginning of the abstract. Okay? And that's what the first thing that reviewers look for. What is the purpose of this paper? The next thing they look for is the theoretical framework in the abstract. Okay? What is the theoretical framework? What theory did you use? The next they want to see is methodology used, method used, including the, I'll talk about that briefly, but the methodology is important. And then, again in the abstract, what we need is key. You can call them major or key results or findings. Okay? A few of them, you have 200 words. The last sentence is also important. Even a sentence is enough. What is the significance or contribution of this study to the field of journalism, media, and communication? Very important. Crisp, precise, ready to go. That's what we require for most journals. Okay. What are we expected in the introduction? Remember, the publication, the research paper is not the same, as I said, as the dissertation, and so there are no chapters. They are not chapters, they are sections. So the first section is introduction, and the introduction, well written, should have the background to the study. Okay? And many people write their own words. Even in the background to the study, please cite. For example, I am an expert in health communication. All my area of interest is health communication. I've written a lot about HIV/AIDS campaigns and so on. I am not an expert on HIV/AIDS. I am not. So when I'm writing about HIV/AIDS and I give the background of HIV/AIDS, say in Uganda, in the US, which I've done, I have to cite because I am not an expert on HIV. So I have to cite those people who are experts in that area. When it comes to health communication, then I have to cite those experts in health communication, including myself. Okay? All right, so please, even in the introduction, if you want to do a great job, please cite, and I see this a lot with our students, even in your dissertation, please cite even in the background. Okay, the context of the study, if you want to do very well, I take those of us who came from journalism, we know the inverted pyramid, yes? The inverted pyramid, when you're writing news stories. So use that. When you're looking at the context, begin with the global. If you're going to talk about Africa, come to Africa, East Africa, and then your country, right? That gives a sense that you have actually done a good literature review. And again, those are words that should not come from you. Those are words that should come from the literature review. Even the context should come from the literature review. You shouldn't just write and if you are the ones who know this context. You should cite, okay? It is a good... the problem statement, this is a big one. Because even in the dissertations, okay, PhD and so on, people keep writing. The problem is that not much research has been done in this blah, 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 blah. Who says that? It can't be you, particularly at master's and PhD level, because you're not an expert. I'm saying this as, again, not to frighten you, but that's the reality, right? You are not an expert, so you need the problem statement to come from the scholars that have studied the issue, because that gives you credibility, all right? I wish I had time to give you examples so that you can know how to write a research problem. Don't just say little research has been done. And most people say little research because they have not gone to the global and Africa. That's why then you will say little research. No, you need to tell us who says that. And if you have done a very good job of literature review, you'll find that studies have been done in this area. The problem statements leads to the purpose of the study. One of my mentors told me, people want to get to the purpose. This is now the body of the paper. They want to get to the study, the purpose of the study very quickly. In 1.5 pages, 2 pages of your writing of the paper, you should get to the purpose of the study because people are looking for that. Okay? What is the problem? Okay, next, what is the purpose of the study? The context and the background are not so important, but they build. They are the curtain raisers, okay? Those are the curtain raisers. Then you get to the problem statement, and then the purpose of the study, which leads to the literature review. Okay, in a research paper, what are we looking for? Have you reviewed prior relevant research studies for your study? And this should be thorough. And for you who are doing PhD and so on, please do a thorough job because a lot of people keep, they don't go wide. And that's a problem because the reviewers, if I'm reviewing, one of the things I do, particularly if I know the subject, Okay? I'll ask you, what about this other study? Did you see this other study? That's what reviewers do. They look for other studies that have been done out there, and you have not put them, you have not cited them in your study. Even external examiners for PhD and master, they do this, okay? They will tell you, what about this other study? You want to make sure that you have exhausted all the relevant studies. The theoretical framework. In some cases, some people begin with the theoretical framework in the literature review for a research paper. The beauty of that is that it gets to the theoretical framework, which leads to those relevant studies, and then they explain and link them together. I don't want to say that's the only way to do it. It's up to you. But remember that whether you begin with theoretical framework, you need to link the theoretical framework and to the study. How is it connected? Okay? So, in the theoretical framework, what we need is a definition of the theory. And please, when you are defining the theories, it is always important, and this is where the topic of yesterday, AI, comes in. AI. Because people, even in their PhD and master dissertation, they do the literature review, and then they don't go to the original study. For example, agenda setting. Agenda setting. Who came up with agenda setting? It was 𝐊𝐤𝐼𝐷 and 𝐊𝐲. By the way, it wasn't 𝐂𝐀, 1963. 𝐂𝐀 said, whatever he said, the media doesn't tell us what to think, tell us what to think about. But the major founder of agenda setting is 𝐊𝐤𝐼𝐷 and 𝐊𝐲. If you're using agenda setting as the theoretical framework, and you don't talk about 𝐊𝐤𝐼𝐷 and 𝐊𝐲, and you have not read that study, there's something missing. So that's what these days people do. They go to AI, and then they just quote other scholars who have studied agenda setting. You should really go back to the original study and then come up with newer studies that are being done, okay? Because that will lead you to know, that will also explain to the reviewer that actually you know what you are talking about, because we need the original definition of the theoretical framework. Remember also, the theoretical framework needs to so the literature review is the link to the theoretical framework, okay? That is what links it. Too many theories, some people write 3 theories and so on. Be careful about that, because you may confound your arguments on the way if you use too many theories, okay? The theoretical framework has implications for the research method. In fact, when you do a literature review, look at what those other prior studies, what research method have they used, because it may help you to come up with your research method. But also, it has implications for the discussion, okay? Because you have to come back to the literature review in the discussion. Okay, methods. This is the biggest problem in research. Research methods. Even if it is PhD or master's, this is the biggest problem. This is where a lot of comments are made by reviewers, but also by external examiners, the research methodology. So, as reviewers, what we ask is, okay, does these methods, do they match the problem statement? Do they match the purpose of the study? Do they match the research questions? And by the way, research questions are the ones that determine the methodology. A lot of people make the mistake, particularly PhD and so on, they say, okay, for me, I'm going to do quantitative research. For me, I'm going to do qualitative research. No, that's not the way it works. You design your research questions, and then the research questions determine the methodology that you're going to use. And that's why the literature review becomes so important, okay? So, remember that. You can't start saying, I'm going to do qualitative, and then the reviewer says, you should have done a what? A quantitative study, or the other way around. Okay. Describe in detail the method used. For example, in the methodology, in a research paper, we don't go to a paradigm and all that. We have only 4,000 words. Okay, don't bother about those things. Go straight to what is your population, what is your sample size, what research method did you use, the measures or concept. If it is qualitative, what are the concepts that we are talking about? Okay, how are they related? Okay, in the dissertation, that's the conceptual framework, right? So here, all we want is to know how did you do it. Okay, remember again, 4,000, 6,000 words. Describe the procedures, okay, in data collection. If it is qualitative, people will ask you, how did you collect the data? Okay, did you use tape recording? People in qualitative research, they keep writing, you know, in the data analysis, they transcribed and so on. Okay, where did the transcription come from? It must have come from the tape recording. So in the methodology, you need to say, I tape recorded, okay, because people want to know. And if you tape recorded or whatever, even if it is a survey, did you have consent forms? If you don't have consent forms, you cannot publish a paper. Okay, you cannot publish a paper when you didn't require consent forms. We have just had a student who has been externally examined, and they have required us to tell them to submit the consent forms. If even external examiners should be careful about that. Okay, data analysis in detail. Okay, data analysis in how did you analyze the data? Qualitative or quantitative? It is qualitative. You did you did thematic analysis. The 6 steps. Professor Solveig knows this well. Those students just taught. Okay, the 6 steps of data analysis. Explain how you did them. Okay, and if you had emerging themes, talk about them in the methodology. If it is quantitative, okay, SPSS, don't just stop there. Talk about the the descriptive data. I did descriptive data, means standard deviation, blah blah, and then I also did inferential statistics, and tell us what you did and why. Okay, the other thing that you need to be aware, the reviewers look for, when you talk about you did a questionnaire, the types of questions that you used. We need some few examples in the research paper. Some few examples, the type of data collected. For quantitative, the type of data and level of measurement matter, because the level of measurement determines the inferential statistics that you can or cannot do. This is not a research method. The presentations are not got there, but you need examples, okay, of the types of questions so that we can know, the reviewer can know where you are coming from. All right? Okay, so the other measurement issues are, talk about validity. Okay, the most important 2 types of validity that you can talk about are face validity, qualitative and quantitative. Face validity. Do your questions on the questionnaire or on the interview guide, do they reflect, do they seem like they're measuring the research questions? You need to say a statement about that, okay? Then content validity. To what extent have you exhausted all the questions? If it is qualitative, okay? To what extent have you exhausted all the questions in your questioning guide, in terms of covering the issues in the research questions, right? if it is quantitative, okay, to what extent does this questionnaire cover all the issues in the research questions? Reliability, very important for quantitative. Those of you who do quantitative, the reliability of the questionnaire, okay? And some require, if you have done inferential statistics, did you do a reliability test? Then we need how you did it and the result of the reliability test, okay? So, you need to say something. Other measurement issues, please, for quantitative, you need to tell us the representativeness of your data. Meaning, if you did sampling, as long as you did sampling, you selected a sample out of so many, explain for quantitative, how representative is it? The 95% what? Confidence level, 5% sampling error. The reviewer wants to see that because that's when they know you know what you're doing, all right? In qualitative, they want to know how did you determine the sample saturation. You kept on interviewing, did the focus group until you reached what? Saturation. Those of you who are teachers of methods, you know, Professor Solve and Professor Tai and Professor Zungi, you know this, and Professor Juko. So, okay, now the results. By the way, the two most important sections of a research paper is not a literature review. The two most important sections are the results and the discussion. That is where the beef is, okay? And some people write this humongous literature review, and then they come to the results and it is, and then the discussion is, yeah. That's not the way it should work. What we want, we know the literature review. The reviewers know the literature review. What we want to know is what did you find out and what does it mean? Okay? Okay, these are the two sections that should be big and humongous in your paper. If they are not, go back and revise. Okay? What did you find out? Okay? These must mirror the research questions. If it is quantitative, it's better to follow the order of the research questions or hypotheses. Okay? So, hypothesis 1, research question was this, and then this is what I found out. Blah, 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 and so on. In that order. Okay? That will make it easier for people, reviewers, to follow what you are saying. For qualitative, it's more flexible. You can follow the emerging themes, or you can follow the research questions. Either way, make it clear that that is what you are following, okay? So that the reviewer, it is easier for the reviewer to know, okay? Some journals prefer to use the word findings for qualitative, but that doesn't matter much. The other thing that I've not talked about is quotations from participants. When you're talking about qualitative, those quotations from the participant shouldn't just come out of the blue. You should explain how you came to those, okay? All right, the discussion. This is the other most important, okay? This is the other most important. Even when you are doing literature review, by the way, for you, you should really not just read the literature review. If you should read in any research paper, read the results and then the discussion. Because that's where the meat is, the beef. Okay, so what do we need here? The reviewer is looking for how you have organized it, okay? The flow. If you want to make it easier for the reviewer, follow the flow of the results section or the findings section. Follow the same path so that, in fact, you should begin with a summary of the findings In the discussion, a paragraph, and then follow, and then state that here's what you're following. Are you following themes? Are you following questions? But follow the flow of the results so that the two match each other, because that's the only way that it's going to make it easy for the reviewer and the editor. This is one of the most important, because what do these results mean for you and the field? This is the so what. I remember a friend of mine who presented their dissertation, and then this was a colleague, you know, at the University of Connecticut, and what? That was it. They failed the what? They failed the defense. And in the US, you fail the defense, that's it. You'll never do a PhD again. So, this is in a research paper, the so what. This is what you found out in question 1, so what? What does it mean? Okay, to you, interpret it, and this is where you are free now to say what you feel. The literature review, okay, the reviewer wants to see that you are linking your findings in the discussion to the literature review, okay? And also linking it to the theoretical framework. The reviewer looks for those two things, okay? And you linking, because people talk about in the literature review, this is the theoretical framework. They come to the discussion, and then the theoretical framework is nowhere to be seen, okay? So, you need to bring it back. That theoretical framework, the literature review, you didn't do it just for fun. It has implications for the discussion. So bring it back and show us, do your findings agree or disagree with the literature review? And by the way, if they disagree, that may be the most important thing that you have found out. Because not every study should agree. If you write your findings and then you say in the discussion, this one agreed with such and such on your study, and so on. This one is also, and what we also want to see is why your results contradict what 𝐊𝐤𝐼𝐻 said. Because that may be the most important thing. And for those of you who do quantitative, if you do a hypothesis and you reject it, that may be the most important finding, because rejecting a hypothesis that you came up with may mean that this is really important. This is contrary to what you expected. It is also contrary to what Professor 𝐊𝐤𝐼𝐻 in 2006 said. That shows that you really are explaining. Now, if it is contrary, what does it mean? Explain. This is the meat. This is what is interesting. A quality paper, that's what it does. Okay? Okay, the conclusion. And in conclusion, restate the purpose. And this is always the shortest section of the research paper. Restate the purpose. What was the purpose? Summary of the findings in a paragraph, okay? And then the significance or contribution to the field. Most important, what is the gap that the study has filled, okay? The significance is where, and for you who are doing PhD, but even professors, if you want to show your contribution, because as you go up the ladder from associate to full professor, what people look for is what is your contribution to the field. If you want to be full professor, what is your contribution? This is where it comes, okay? This is where people will go back to your studies and look at your research paper and say, oh, this is what they did, this contribution, okay? The gap that they filled. Also, suggest areas for future research, okay? Suggest areas, questions for future research, for you, but also others. In fact, for us who are teaching our students, this is the way you look for the gap that, the problem statement, okay, for your next research. Tell your students please look for the areas for future research that have been pointed out, the gaps, because this is the problem statement for your future research. Really important. Limitations, some people fear to do that, but it is okay if you do it. Maybe reviewers don't mind so much about this one. It's the suggestion of future research. As I said, normally the shortest section. Okay? Now, concluding remarks. One, for us in our African Journal communication, adhere to APS style. This is a problem. As a reviewer, particularly as an editor, we're wasting so much time in this. Okay, I'm sending a lot of papers back to you and saying, please adhere to what? APS style. Go to APS style, most recent, which is 2020. Go to Google and put in most recent APS style, and you will see money. Okay. Citations. One of the things is citation in the text. How to cite in the text. Very important, because reviewers are not happy when you just cite anyhow. There are guidelines in APA for citation in the text. Okay? Level of headings, it may appear small, but these small issues bother editors. Okay? You are writing your levels of headings anyhow. At your level, particularly the PhD and above, you should really adhere this. The other thing that really frustrates me is this paragraphing. I keep seeing people not indenting the paragraph, each paragraph. And I ask, where did this come from? Because for APS style, each paragraph must be what? Indented 2.5 centimeters, 1 inch in American, for those of us who are American. Okay? The participant quotes have regulations. How you put the participant quotes. Okay, if it is more than 40 words, it has to be put in a certain way as a block, indented. Okay, if it is less than 40 words, then it can be in the same paragraph with the quotes. References. Again, I'm talking about APS style because our journal requires APS style. For those, look for other journals, okay, they may use Harvard and so on. Follow that if that's what they require. For us, we require APS style. Okay? One of the biggest problems that is delaying and that has limited our frequency of publication of our journal is quality of writing. Okay? Coming from our members, including faculty, including professors, lecturers, senior lecturers, associate professors, and so on. This is an issue, and this is why we are doing this, so that you can know the way a research paper is written. What are reviewers looking for? Why do they keep sending you and saying we revise? These are the issues that the reviewers look at, and the editors. Okay, so I want also to stress the importance of our journal because our journal gives IACA visibility. It gives it credibility, and so please, if you are ready with your papers, please send them as soon as possible. Luckily, for the next issue, you already have 6 papers. Please send your papers ASAP so that we can go through the review process. We intend to publish our journal by March. And actually, I have to commend Daystar University because Daystar has really pushed a lot of their students to send up to our journal. And they are supporting our journal a lot. For those of you who have got papers, please send them. The deadline is November 1st. So, with those few many comments, whatever you take it, we can talk until the cows come home, but I'll stop there. And Just thank you so much for giving